So I'd like to call this meeting to order. The Planning Commission meeting November 8th, 2022. If we could stand for the flag salute, please. And Commissioner Maccaro is going to lead us in that. You roll call.
Chair Barbe,
Present.
Commissioner Barber,
Present.
Commissioner Doan is absent, Commissioner Maccaro,
Present.
Vice Chair Paul,
Yes, present.
Commissioner Spear,
Present.
Commissioner Weiler,
Here.
Okay, let's move on to the minutes. The minutes of October 25th. Are there any modifications or changes or comments by the commissioners? Hearing none, is there a motion, as I was not here?
Move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call? Oops. We have a roll call on the minutes?
Chair Barbe,
I'll abstain.
Commissioner Barber,
Aye.
Commissioner Maccaro,
Approve.
Vice Chair Paul,
Yes, approve.
Commissioner Spear,
Yes. Approve.
Commissioner Weiler.
Yes.
The vote is 5-0 to approve with one abstained.
Great, thank you. So I'd just like to start out this meeting by saying a big thank you to Commissioner Paul for chairing the last bunch of meetings in my absence, and also to staff for identifying and establishing an email address for all of the planning commissioners, which I think is really helpful so that the public can email us all at one time, and we all get copied at the same time, which I think is a great improvement. Also wanted to comment on the development platform that I know the city has worked very hard to put together, the major projects development website, which is really helpful. Dashboard, excuse me. Great dashboard. I think that's going to be very helpful going forward. Written communications?
There are none.
I'm sorry, there actually was one thing that was placed on, or two things placed on the dais. One is a letter or a comment on one of the items, the public hearing item G1, that was submitted through our portal. And the other is a handout that Commissioner Spear just provided related to item, I believe it's H2, the discussion of the work plan.
For the work plan, right. Great, thank you. And oral communications, not related to agenda items?
There are none.
Okay, hearing none. Okay, let's move to public hearings. The first hearing we will have is PL 220325 and PL 220326, Starbucks Coffee. Master Development Plan and Precise Development Plan.
Thank you, Chair Barbe, and good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ivan Flores, and I'm an Associate Planner with the Planning Division, and I will be presenting on PL 22-0325 and PL 22-0326. The applicant, Newmark Merrill Companies, has submitted a Master Development Plan and Precise Development Plan for the construction of a approximately 1,023 square foot drive-through coffee facility with dual lanes and associated on-site improvements. The project includes the demolition of an existing single-family residence on the property. The subject property is located within the planned commercial land use designation of the general plan. Specifically, it's identified in the Promenade Retail Center and Vicinity Target area, which includes the Target Center to the north, Lexus to the west, and multifamily residential properties adjacent to Lexus. The purpose of this general plan land use designation is to support the commercial development in this area and to eventually transition some of the single-family residences within this target area to commercial uses as appropriate. This parcel being one of the last remaining residential properties within this general plan land use designation. The properties identified in the zoning, on the zoning map as planned development commercial. As a part of one of the requirements for developing within this zoning designation, the applicant's responsible for submitting a master development plan and precise development plan, which will go to City Council for a final approval, dependent on Planning Commission's decision tonight. Generally, the project is adjacent to the Interstate 15. It's approximately 5.53 acres in size. As mentioned earlier, it's surrounded by residential and a parking lot to the south, the Lexus dealership to the west, commercial uses to the north, and the I-15 to the east. The project involves the demolition of an underutilized parcel with a single-family residence on it currently. The applicant is proposing a dual-lane drive-through coffee facility with access provided on Tanglewood. The dual-lane drive-throughs can accommodate up to 18 vehicles in the queuing lane, with an additional 18 off-street parking spaces provided on-site. The use does not include any indoor dining, so it would only solely be for drive-through use and for a walk-up if someone chooses to. The building itself is located approximately 40 feet away from the property line, and with some landscaping in between the property line and the building itself. They are proposing a retaining wall at the rear of the property to raise the site, with the retaining wall being 3 feet at the lowest point to 7 feet at its highest. The retaining wall will be constructed of decorative material to match the proposed building. Due to the grading that they will be proposing, there will be a slight grade difference between the Lexus property and the subject property with about a 15-foot height difference from the parking lot to the west and the subject site. The project also includes sidewalk improvements, which would fill an existing gap. So currently there is no sidewalk on this portion of Tanglewood Lane, and the property would be responsible for putting that in. Access to the site is also provided via the sidewalk as shown on the site plan. The building will be approximately 23 feet in height. They are proposing a mix of vintage wood and cement plaster finish. Just so you have a good understanding as to where everything is oriented, the west elevation would be the walk-up portion of the building, the south elevation facing the parking lot, the north elevation facing Tanglewood Lane, more accurately the drive-through lane, and the east elevation is the drive-through lane itself. Approximately 35% of the property will be landscaped with a combination of hybrid fan palm, Desert Museum Palo Verde, Gem Coast Rosemary, Laurel Sherry, and Davis Gold Tyon. The applicant is also proposing screening adjacent to the Tanglewood Lane as identified as Section B. The next slide will give you a better idea as to the effectiveness of the screening. And here you can kind of better clearly see where the sidewalk will be relative to the site itself. So Section A is if a perspective provided if you were to be driving south on Tanglewood Lane. So here you see some screening to screen the parking stalls. Section B is if you are to be driving north on Tanglewood Lane. They're using a combination of berming and landscaping approximately 3 to 4 feet in height within 2 years of planting to screen the drive-through. And here to the left, you'll see the planting palette that's proposed. As a part of this application, the applicant is also proposing a sign program, as planned developments are not subject to Article 66 of the sign ordinance. And so generally, as they go through the process, they would be proposing their own signage in accordance with their regulations that are appropriate for the type of use. Here you'll see that the applicant is proposing a total of 4 wall signs, 2 wall signs per elevation, and 2 freestanding signs with a 6-foot monument sign located at the northwest corner of the property, and a 65-foot freeway-oriented sign adjacent to the driveway. So the applicant would be responsible for still submitting for a sign permit, and we would review the signs in accordance with this proposed sign program. So your recommendation for approval doesn't necessarily approve the signs themselves, just guidelines for how we review them. This is the 6-foot monument sign that's located at the northwest corner that they are proposing, not to exceed 30 square feet and 6 feet in height. The applicant is also proposing a freeway-oriented pylon sign to address the change in the difference in grade between the I-15 freeway and the subject site. That includes a 65-foot illuminated pylon sign, not to exceed 80 square feet. And this is located adjacent to the driveway for the subject property. Based on the analysis contained in the staff report, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number 2022-12, recommending approval to the City Council. Staff is available for any questions that the applicant may have, and the applicant is also here for any questions that the Commission may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Before we proceed with the applicant, are there any disclosures on the part of commissioners for this project? Seeing none. Does the applicant have a presentation, or just want to be available for questions? Just a quick minute. Sure.
Good evening. Just want to say mostly hello and thank you all, Chair and members of the Commission, for your time this evening, particularly on a rainy, cold night like this one. Appreciate your time. Extra big thank you to staff, Adam, Jason, Ivan. You guys done a great job, and frankly, it's been a pleasure working through the City of Escondido on this one, and it's been good communication and quick reviews, and frankly, it's been a pleasure working with you guys. I don't need to spend a whole lot of time talking too much about the project. I think you guys will have your questions that you can ask us and staff, and we're happy to answer any of those. Just from a high level, we're excited about the project, and we've looked at a lot of opportunities in Escondido and are trying to find more opportunities to invest in the city here. And it's not every day that we find an existing residential home to do a Starbucks drive-through project on, but this project has turned into sort of an exciting one for us, and we hope to sort of leverage this to do more and more in the city. And just from a sort of a high concept level on this project, it was an interesting project in terms of identifying and attracting a good quality commercial tenant to come to the site. It's great being on Auto Park Way, and that's really one of the sort of defining factors of the project that makes it especially enticing to somebody like Starbucks. It's nice being set off the street in a way where having a drive-through and having the queue and all that good stuff is not set on a main road because it does give us a little bit of separation from the super busy main street. But at the same time, that does take us a little bit further back from the action, buries the site a little bit, and does make it a little bit tougher to see. So that's why I think you guys are before you today is the sign proposal, which may be a little bit different than some of the other projects that you've seen in the vicinity. But we spent a lot of time with staff trying to make sure that we design that in a thoughtful way from both an aesthetic standpoint and positioning it perpendicular to other signs in the vicinity, not to interfere with them. And overall trying to make sure that it's a manageable size and stature so that's not overbearing. So I just want to give you a little bit of additional background on sort of why we included that as a project feature. But we're available for questions, and once again, thanks for your time.
Could you provide your name, please, and your
Yeah.
affiliation?
Sorry about that. I'm Barrett. I oversee development for Newmark Merrill Companies, the applicant.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Questions for staff
Oh, I have a question.
for
Since-
the applicant? Sorry.
Since at least one resident is opposing the concept of introducing commercial into that neighborhood, could you give me a brief history on when this rezone took place and whether or not there was any neighborhood opposition to it at the time?
So as far as I'm aware, we did look at some of our old zoning maps, and this parcel has been zoned PDC for quite a while. It's still reflected on a lot of our older paper zoning maps that we have in the office. So I wouldn't be able to pinpoint a precise date, but when we did the 2012 general plan update, there would have been public outreach as a part of that. So can't clearly identify a date as to when it was rezoned or zoned that specific zoning district, but it's been zoned that for quite a while.
I'd ask the chair if this is the appropriate time to address the citizens' input they provided us, but I was curious about one issue that they brought up. Can I address that now, or?
Yeah, actually, I have to apologize. I think probably should have had that read into the record first. Dara, is that right?
Well, I think, yes, actually, we should have read it.
Yeah, that's what I just realized. I skipped a step there. So I'm sorry, if you don't, if that's okay, we'll read it.
That's what I am asking.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate that. No, we'll read it into the record and then go back to the Q&A.
So this comment is from Jody Dale, and it reads as follows. I am writing to vehemently voice my opposition to building of a 2-lane, 18-car drive-through Starbucks coffee shop. I purchased my condominium on Tanglewood Lane a little over 2 years ago. Part of the appeal was that the street is quietly tucked away from the main roadway. If this Starbucks is built, that will no longer be the case. The street will become overwhelmed with cars, not to mention noise pollution. Plus, what guarantee will there be that no more than 18 cars will be in the drive-through, thus spilling out onto Tanglewood Lane? Almost every drive-through coffee shop I have seen has cars that are blocking the nearby street. There is already a Starbucks location a mile away, so building one on my street is unnecessary. Not to mention, there are several business centers in the area where a drive-through coffee shop could be built that won't disrupt a quiet residential neighborhood. Tanglewood Lane can only be accessed by making a U-turn at the traffic light on West 9th Avenue and Auto Parkway. This intersection is already hectic between people going to the middle school to the left and others needing to make a U-turn to access the houses, condos, and the large apartment complex on this street. Adding even more cars, excuse me, will exacerbate the problem. Not to mention, if people are going to the coffee shop, don't know the area, they won't be able to navigate safely and very likely will be distracted by direction applications on their cell phones or drinking and eating the items they just purchased. There is only one lane in each direction on Tanglewood Lane as well as a blind curve. If people aren't paying attention, there's a high probability they won't see a car coming from the opposite direction, resulting in an accident. This is especially a possibility when people are exiting the coffee shop's driveway. They will have to make a left-hand turn to get back to the main thoroughfare as Tanglewood Lane is a dead end. Unfortunately, there is just a stop sign exiting Tanglewood Lane instead of a stoplight. This will cause the street to become severely backed up, especially during busy times of the day, with vehicles coming from the coffee shop and those residents trying to get to or from work or anywhere else they need to go. If people need to get back on the 15 North or the 78 in either direction, they will have to get across 3 lanes of traffic, which is very busy at all times. This will cause massive backup on Tanglewood Lane, with people waiting for it to become clear for them to proceed. Then if it is not clear and people try to get across, there is a high probability of an accident. The same will occur if people are getting onto the 15 South or just want to get back onto Auto Parkway. Lastly, the building of a drive-through Starbucks would be an eyesore, not to mention, no matter how much landscape is done around the building, there is no way to avoid seeing car after car exiting the shop as well as the building itself. My patio doors and windows will directly face the driveway entrance to the coffee shop, not to mention the 65-foot Starbucks sign that will be constructed for freeway visibility. I sure don't want to look at that hideous Starbucks logo from every window of my condo, would you? Once again, corporate greed is threatening to ruin a quiet neighborhood. If you lived on this street, how would you feel if a Starbucks drive-thru was built that threatens the peace and quiet of your neighborhood? Have any of you even explored the area in person and seen for yourself how unfeasible building this coffee shop is on my street? If you have or you haven't, I implore you to come and look and consider it from the perspective of those of us that currently live on Tanglewood Lane or those that will in the future. I implore you to vote no on the approval of this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
The issue that that's expressed in this letter that I'd like staff to address is their concern that there's a blind curve that could be a potential traffic hazard.
Yes. As far as the blind curve goes, as part of the review for the project, we moved the driveway to the best location, and the project also was analyzed for sight distance, and the way it's designed right now, it meets all of the requirements for sight distance for anybody who wants to come out and make that left. There's adequate sight lines for them to be able to see oncoming cars and make that decision on their own. So
Okay, so
yeah.
obviously we've taken care to make it not a blind curve.
Right.
All right,
Thank you.
Other thoughts, questions?
I have a few questions.
You speak right into the thing.
Yeah. If possible, can you explain the path that someone would take approaching from the east and approaching from the west? We were talking about U-turns and things like that. Could you explain what would be that path? If you have traffic coming from either direction, how would they get to the entrance?
So if you are coming from the west heading down Auto Parkway towards 9th Avenue, you would then make a right turn into the subject property if you were coming west. The commenter is correct in that if you were wanting to access this subject property coming east towards Auto Parkway 9th, so coming this way from the freeway, you would have to make a U-turn at that signal. There is a left turn pocket in this area, but there's no U-turn permitted there. So they would have to go to that signalized intersection at Auto Parkway and 9th Avenue for them to go to the Starbucks.
Could I expand on that question? Why isn't a U-turn allowed at the Lexus?
So, based on traffic studies, when the Lexus dealership was built and its proximity to intersections, i.e. Tanglewood, 9th, and then the on-ramps to the 15, it was determined that that was not an appropriate turning mechanism or turning movement there.
But why not? What's not appropriate?
I'm not a traffic engineer, so I can't answer that specifically.
I'm just guessing that, the reason why there's no left turn coming from there may be the proximity to the freeway, perhaps. I don't know the answer, but I'm thinking that looks pretty close to the freeway. Maybe that's why. Again, I'm just guessing at that. I do have some other questions, however, unless you have follow-up on that. No? There was the complaint also mentions overflow onto the street. However, as we refer back to that plan, what I'm seeing here is 14 or 18 cars in the lanes of commerce. You would have to exceed that with overflow on site for quite a ways, I see, before you would ever impact the street. Is that correct?
That is correct. The traffic study did analyze on-site circulation as a part of the project. The traffic study anticipates that you can approximately have about 3 to 4 more cars in the queuing lane before you reach the throat for the driveway and onto the subject site.
Do we have any understanding of what's typical in terms of overflow? I mean, is that 3 or 4 cars really pretty much in the realm of never going to happen, could happen, for sure will happen? Do we know?
Is that a question for the applicant? I'm not sure.
Maybe.
I guess from a planning standpoint, I could speak to that. We've had experience with this over the last 5 years or so, with queuing issues on certain drive-through facilities, coffee facilities tending to be one of them. Probably about 5 years ago or so, we created standards for number of queuing spaces that were recommended, and I think our zoning ordinance has that in CUP section for drive-through uses. It recommends a minimum of 6 or as determined necessary based on the use. 6 is something that you would see on a lot of the older drive-throughs. It's the minimum that we would accept for projects where you don't expect a long queue. Maybe even like a drugstore or a flower shop, something that's not a restaurant. Restaurants we've seen and historically been looking at traffic and trip generation studies that have shown that approximately 14 is about the max that you're going to be seeing. The first one that we really got into looking at this on was it's actually the Starbucks that's over in, I think it's the Escondido Signature Pavilion, that's what it is, right across the street here. When they built that, we had some concerns regarding that drive-through lane stacking back out onto the main access that goes down to Valley. And that's where we first saw that 13, 14 number as something that would be sufficient. We've continued to see something in that range with a lot of other projects that we've seen recently. I think that the Dutch Brother Coffee, I think there's been 2 of those that have come through here, and I think they've been around 18 to 20, something in that range. So that's kind of a standard that we're typically seeing these days. I'm sure the applicant probably could speak to it as well, but that's kind of the experience and history we've had with it recently.
For clarification, the 18 number, that is the total number, those in line, those with overflow, or what is the 18 number?
18, as you see on the plan here, it's the number of vehicles that can fit from the pickup window circulating all the way back to where those 2 lanes start.
So you're saying that's the number that we're looking for, and we've got more than that?
14 or 15 is kind of the number we typically see. 18 is nice to have, and they can probably fit another 4 or 5 even.
Okay, thanks. Third question?
Go for it.
My third question relates to the 65-foot sign. For that sign, you had mentioned this, and I just would like a little clarification on the process for review of that sign. Is that deferred and not a part of this approval, I think is what you alluded to? That's my first question. My second question is, I wasn't real clear on the criteria or limitations of the design of that sign.
Yeah, so obviously tonight we're making a recommendation to City Council for approval on the project itself. As stated, when you go through a plan development process, our typical sign ordinance doesn't apply. So generally, our sign ordinance says that freeway-oriented signs are permitted on properties that are adjacent to the I-15 and other circumstances as it relates to the 78. This is adjacent to, if you were to be reviewing it under that criteria of the freeway-oriented signs as outlined in our zoning ordinance, this would be one of those candidates. Typically, you're permitted an 80-foot high freeway sign. They're proposing 65 feet. And so tonight, we're making a decision on the overall sign guidelines for the property. When they submit a sign permit later down the line, post entitlement, we would review it in accordance with what's approved as a part of the sign criteria for this subject site. We do look at it in comparison with the sign ordinance to make sure that there's nothing really, there's not a big deviation from what we allow on our through the sign ordinance. But like I said, our sign ordinance does permit an 80-foot freeway-oriented sign. And I believe 80 square feet is the max. And so this kind of meets those two criteria.
So only two criteria apply to this sign in terms of our typical freeway guidelines?
So it is location of the site itself, making sure that it's adjacent to the Interstate 15, the height and the square footage. Yeah. And then the sign ordinance itself does have allowable sign area based on the size of the lot. But because our sign ordinance doesn't apply, the applicant is able to propose. The purpose of the plan development is to allow flexibility in the site of the design of the site itself, and that includes buildings, setbacks, building height. We do compare it against our existing development standards to make sure that there's not a large deviation. But yes, it is generally location, height, and sign area that we look at for freeway-oriented signs.
So there has been a mention in the complaint regarding this sign as well. It sounds like the criteria that we're looking at are addressed in terms of what's there, in terms of the ability to put this sign, the height of the sign, the square footage of the sign. Outside of the those guidelines, was context visited in terms of that location and putting up this sign and how that's going to look compared to all of the other businesses and their signs? Is this a mammoth compared to everything else? The context, was that looked at?
We did have that discussion with the applicant as to the other existing freeway-oriented signs, such as the Escondido Auto Park signage, the In-N-Out Hotel signage, the Target signage, and the Ross and Dick signage, which they're all adjacent to the Interstate 15. So we did look at it in that context. We didn't get specific heights for those signage, but when it came to the design, we wanted to make sure that the design was comparative to those existing designs out there.
Do you have anything for reference? I mean, this view of it here looks like a monument. It looks enormous. Now, obviously, the objective is to get signage for freeway traffic, which requires it to be elevated. But do you have for us anything that shows, hey, this is what it's going to look like in context, as opposed to just the sign elevation?
Unfortunately, outside of this, we don't. But the applicant might be able to provide additional details as to how they got to this sign.
Yes, thank you. So earlier on in the process, we did analyze sort of the existing foliage that is out in front and surrounding the site. There are some very dense, mature trees in that vicinity. And the 65-foot height that we have proposed, which once again is under sort of the code max of 80, but was really driven by us trying to get the sign above and beyond where the existing foliage is out there. So we did do a couple studies to show, and this sign design is old, so hopefully you don't mind that. But the height of the sign in this exhibit that I'm going to pass out is 65 feet. And you'll see that that essentially gets us enough height just to clear the foliage that is out there today. Can I pass these out?
Yes. I don't know, there. It's cool. Does that help, Barry? Yeah, that's good. I actually have some questions around the signage as well. I just think there's a discrepancy perhaps, because I believe you mentioned in your presentation that the monument sign was going to be close to the entrance. Is that correct? Where the cars drive into the site?
Yes, the pylon sign, which is this sign, is located adjacent to the driveway access. This monument sign is located at the northwest corner. So this is the monument sign,
Ah, okay.
and this is the pylon sign.
Okay, because I thought it was back in the other, I guess that would be the northwest corner, or southwest corner. That's where I thought it was. Okay.
Is that facing northbound traffic? Is that the goal? Just for orientation of that pylon sign, I'm assuming that the signage is facing the northbound traffic. Is that correct?
It is double faced, and so it would be. I would assume it would be facing north and south.
I guess that's true, yeah.
Right, and I guess my question there was, I'm sorry, I should pass this on. When I was there the other day, just checking this out, and particularly, or maybe it was yesterday, based on the complainant, and I was curious to see, well, now that I hear that the monument sign is going to be on that corner, but at that height, I'm just curious if it conflicts, or the very large Lexus fluorescent or ever-changing thing that's on the Lexus dealership. I'm just wondering if that's going to be even worth it if that sign is conflicting from a sight line from the highway, and therefore, why bother? It's just a question.
Yeah, overall, from a positioning standpoint, we did try to position the sign sort of in the plan view that you're looking at it, sort of east and south enough, hugging up against our driveway, so that, you know, as a driver is driving down the freeway and can sort of see that Lexus sign off to kind of their right peripheral, we're positioned kind of perpendicular to that. Whereas if you're looking at, the Lexus sign,
Right.
Flat on like that, we're kind of angled differently facing the freeway, so that we're really not like getting lost in their sign nor blocking them.
Yeah, and actually, by putting it perpendicular will make a huge difference, because you get the north and south versus the Lexus is more horizontal to the. Okay.
Yeah, we talked to them early, and they made us aware, obviously, that they really
Right.
value that sign, and we didn't want to block them or have them basically have ours get lost, so we thought about that.
Right, and actually, from this visual that you've just provided us, it's real clear that I can understand the complainant is concerned that he or she would be looking directly likely at that sign. I was trying to figure out when the complainant also said that their patio would face directly the driveway, which struck me as didn't strike me as being accurate, but.
Yeah, the Lexus dealership, and obviously I should probably let staff answer some of these questions, but the Lexus dealership also has an existing wall along our southern property boundary, and their whole parking over there is lit up, so.
Right, okay. Okay, other questions or comments? Questions, actually, at this point.
Yeah, so first is, do we have any other public comments?
No. Oh, sorry.
We do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so can we have the rest of the public comments?
Please.
Ronaldo Itil? Oh, I'm sorry.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, apologize for my attire. I don't mean to disrespect the sanctity and civility of the proceedings. I just didn't really know what the decorum was, and it's wet and rainy, and I was walking my dog. So I'm a resident on Tanglewood. Oh, sorry, Ronaldo, you already said my name, but Ronaldo Hill. Resident on Tanglewood. I purchased my condo in June of 18, so I've been a resident for 4 years. There's many points here. I'm going to try not to be tangential. I see that I've got a clock anyways, but there's many points that you, sir, have raised, that you've raised, that I think are greatly diminished if you are not living. I walk my dog on Tanglewood every day, that blind corner that the other complainant mentioned. I mean, Raven and I have to get out of the way. People come zooming around that corner. So how exactly, like that how steep that is, what you guys are going to do to address that, just simply saying we've got it covered, as somebody who walks that path every day and having to be aware of when I'm taking that path, that's a dangerous corner. The other thing, as far as the sign goes, As you go down Tanglewood, as you see this sloping going towards Ninth, that's actually a gradient there. So to the point of the other existing signage, you don't see it from our perspective on the thing. So that sign would be considerably obnoxious, particularly from whoever residents' patio faces that way. The traffic onto Ninth, this figure of 14 to 18 cars as if it's not going to pollute, Mr. Feinstone, I think you said 18 cars coming off the way. I'm not sure if you had anything to do with the Raising Cane's that's coming off of East Valley, I believe. That has to be considerably more than 14 or 18 cars. I think your benchmark for thinking about the amount of traffic that already exists in that way is it's got to be under whatever that standard is. I'm not sure exactly how to say that, but I think you get where I'm going with that. We are very concerned about the amount of traffic. Tanglewood coming off of it as a one-way and not being able to make that U-turn where the Lexus dealership is, to include the existing U-turn that you can make at the light. They're almost always, the people that they don't have a, as they're coming away from the middle school off of 9th Ave, they don't have a stop on red. So you have people simultaneously trying to make a right-hand turn on red while the people have the U-turn and they get their green arrow. You have to avoid that. It's almost actually safer to make an illegal U at the Lexus dealership. So with the increased flow of that Starbucks, the congestion between the middle school coming down 9th Ave, coming off of, going towards the 15, coming off the 15, again, as residents, we are deeply concerned about the effect that this is gonna have on our quality of life. We can cut through those apartments that, I don't know if you showed this, you mentioned those apartments. I know I'm running out of time, but I'm not sure exactly where it was in your slides, but there are other apartments away from our condos off of Tanglewood that we cut through onto 11th Ave. What then happens when those cars start cutting through that existing apartment complex and then congesting 11th Ave? Or are us as the existing residents on Tanglewood, are we forced to then take 11th Ave to go all the way around just because of the congestion from the Starbucks? Again, you guys don't live there. I've lived there for 4 years, and I just don't think you understand the concern that we have about all of these measures that you're trying to push through. And then this idea, I know I'm running out of time, but you said you want to slowly move on the single-family properties. The idea is to turn this into no longer be residential. I mean, the Lexus dealership has already flattened 2 houses and made that parking lot, to which the lighting there, actually, it's all shielded. So we don't see that light pollution from that existing parking structure. But there's Mr. Miller's house, the one that's this plot. That one's going to go up. There's one more. And then what happens? Are we looking at the other only 3 single-family homes on Tanglewood disappearing? And then it's just our 24 condos at the end of that block? Is that what's happening? That's the feeling that we're having. That's the anxiety that you're probably feeling from me right now, in the sense that as a first-time homeowner, is the plan for the city to slowly just force us all out of our homes?
Okay.
Is that a concern for anyone? So, sorry, I don't mean to be agitated, but you know, it's a cause of concern for us. And there's 2 other Starbucks, actually closer. I think that letter mentions a mile. The Escondido Promenade, I mean, it's walking distance. I make that walk almost every other day with my dog. And that Lexus dealership has a barista inside of it. How many more coffee shops does Escondido need, particularly Starbucks?
Okay, thank you very much for your thoughts. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming in. Are there any other public comments on the project?
Mr. Bradley, you did fill out a slip. Did you have any additional comments? Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So, my first question, during your presentation, you said this would go to the city council depending on the decision we make tonight. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes. So generally, when we've been seeing these drive-through applications, it's been through a conditional use permit, and the planning commission has been the final decision maker on those applications. Because of the zoning of the property, which is planned development commercial, our zoning code Article 19 requires what's called a master plan and a precise development plan. Planning commission acts as a recommendation body to city council for a final decision on the project itself. So it's really based off, what's really driving this is the location and the zoning of it. We can't process a conditional use permit in this zoning district, and so what they need to submit is a master plan, which the city council acts on.
What action would we take that would not have to go to the city council?
if it were any other type of application, like a conditional use permit. So tonight you would be, based off of staff's recommendation, recommending approval to city council on the master plan and precise development plan.
Right, but you said depending on what we do, it would or would not go to the city council. So what could we do that it wouldn't go to the city council? I mean,
Could I just jump in and clarify? I think that was just possibly a misspeaking. Either way, you're recommending to the city council what this commission decides to do.
okay, and then to go back to the monument sign, so that's you showed it with a 6-foot height, person standing next to it, but is that corner already, it's going to be elevated from the road, right? So the bottom of that sign is already going to be above the street?
You're talking about the monument sign, correct? The sign?
Right. I mean, there's retaining wall there, and I assume that's going to be elevated above the height of the street in that area?
There's there's about a 1 foot difference from the sidewalk to the monument sign.
Oh, really? That's all? It's not going to be way up in the...
No, it's not, no.
No, it's just the freeway-oriented sign is the high one, seems.
Okay, so where does the height, you said it ranges from 3 feet to 7 feet. Where does the retaining wall go up to 7 feet?
So as you move west from here, the retaining wall starts to increase in height. At the highest point, it will be 7 feet. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the grading plan as well. It'll be at the highest point in this area. So it ranges from approximately 1 foot to 7 feet across these property lines.
Okay. And then traffic, and I don't see anything here about trip generation, how many trips we think this development will create.
There was a traffic study done that analyzed the project as a whole. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me as how many trips that are in that study that are generated by this site.
You say a traffic study was done for the project as a whole. What else was part of the project that was studied?
Well, each of these intersections was also looked at as part of that analysis.
No, right now there's a single-family house there, and when we take the house out and we put in the drive-through, what's the change in the traffic, the daily trips?
Right, I get the question, but I don't have the exact number of the answer for you, sorry.
Okay. Also, there's a review for the general plan conformance, and the report says the site is within the promenade, retail center, and vicinity target area, which outlines several guiding principles for development within this area, such as, and it has guiding principle number 3 and commercial land use policy 8.8. What are the other guiding principles of the promenade retail center?
So generally, when we draft these general plan conformance sections of the staff report, we identify policies and principles that are most pertinent to the project itself. And so I wouldn't know off the top of my head, but it's within the general plan document.
Okay. And there is going to be the drive-through window, and then a walk-up window. And I assume that's when I order my coffee on my app, I can pull in and I can park, and then I don't have to get in the queuing line. Right? I take one of the 18 parking spaces and I walk up to the window. So, well, I was going to ask how is that related to the traffic study, but we didn't do any traffic analysis for the number of trips to this location. So I guess that's not a question.
We did do a traffic analysis, identified the number of trips. We just don't have that information available here tonight.
Well, okay.
So could you clarify also just that the zoning, I think perhaps it's related to what Commissioner Paul was just saying, the zoning issue that the resident spoke about with respect to that area, U2, is that?
So as far as our general plan and our zoning is concerned, there is no expectation, no anticipated development of commercial uses on these sites. These sites, specifically the single-family residences located directly adjacent to the Interstate 15, they're identified as Urban 2 in the city's general plan, and the corresponding R212 in the city's zoning map. And so the boundaries for the planned commercial development ends at Tanglewood for these properties in question.
So that would be the end of commercial development as zoned currently.
That is correct, and it is the last, like, as identified in the staff report, the intention of these target areas to address these last remaining residential uses in the commercial district.
Okay. Right. I guess for me, as with the Dutch Brothers project and some of these other drive-through projects, I just have the ongoing concern about queuing and idling motors all the time, and all of these the pollution aspects as well as the congestion aspects. I think could be a challenge here, especially for the traffic trying to get back out. I think there could well be backups there, depending on how fast that queue moves. But that's to be determined, I suspect. Okay. So other questions, Commissioner Weiler?
So as far as the traffic analysis that was completed on this, it almost seems like what was done, what was analyzed, are not meeting thresholds that would warrant staff to have concerns on the increase in traffic or the conflicts that were mentioned by in this email and also by the speaker. So is that safe to say that this traffic has been looked at and is not causing the city to have concerns, therefore there's a recommendation of approval without additional mitigation measures?
Yeah, I can expand on that a little bit. So the traffic study was completed. It analyzed all of the intersections, including the U-turn that's been mentioned a couple times. And in that traffic study, it was concluded that there was not a significant impact based on the addition of this project to the timing of any of those signals or the queuing or waiting of the general public in those areas.
So this is zoned, the general plan and zoning is for commercial here. So regardless, there's going to be some commercial development that occurs here. So what I'm kind of thinking is at some point there's going to be a commercial development. The traffic, I would assume, because based on the relatively small size of this, whatever other type of commercial development that goes in here is going to have the same issues, you know. There's really not that, I'm assuming, not that big of a difference. If we're looking at a Starbucks or looking at whatever other commercial development, you still have traffic coming in and out. This is a commercial site. It kind of is what it is. And as I look at how this was set up, how it was developed, we've got 18 vehicles that are in the queue. I don't know. I think we saw there was 4 or 5 maybe additional that can occur in the parking lot, but it looks like there's more than that. It looks like you probably get another 10. We've looked at, a couple of the Dutch Brothers, very similar type of configuration, and I don't see that big of a difference, especially with this kind of design that would handle, you know, the queuing that would occur for a coffee establishment. Yeah, Starbucks is everywhere. It seems like the Dutch Brothers is kind of new. It's kind of exciting. It's not a Starbucks. It's something else. I would think that more people would be heading there than maybe here. Anyway, it's just some of my observations. I can certainly understand where the adjacent property owner is coming from. Yeah, he lives there, he sees the traffic and how that circulation occurs, but it's a commercial site. It's gonna get developed, and you know, I don't think the impacts are gonna be different with this or any other commercial site. So, and you know, looking at this as a whole, looks like it's inside the box. Kind of meets all the zoning and meets all of the things that we put together in our code as far as signs, location, traffic patterns, and the internal design. The looks like the landscaping is going to be in such a way that it would end up blocking any off-site light spillage from the vehicles that travel through there at night. I can't see that, at least as these vehicles come in and go through the queuing, that there's going to be vehicle lights that spill off to the residents that are to the east and to the south. So anyhow, that's my observations of this design, and then certainly the comments by fellow commissioners.
Thank you. Commissioner McCarroll?
Can I just ask a question about the hours of operation for this location?
I have to defer to the applicant for that.
Just give me 1 minute, I will try to find them. I believe our tenant sent those to me. They were a question of, they're a question at one point. So I want to make sure I give you the right information. I will have to, I'll have to try to dig that up and provide that to you.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Any other? No. Okay. Okay, Commissioner Spear?
Just as a follow-up, I mean, I think we had a good discussion regarding engineering and the review of this for traffic, that at a careful look at this, there were no eyebrow raisings in terms of what the results of that study was. I'm just picturing myself as I'm driving northbound and I'm looking at the location of this monument, or this tall sign. And I guess part of my question is are we catching traffic with this sign before the exit occurs? Or are we talking about folks that look over and they see a Starbucks sign, they say, I want to go there. They've just passed the 9th Avenue exit, and they're really exiting on Valley Parkway and coming around, hence avoiding this issue of a U-turn. What is the path? Once they see the sign, what exit do they take northbound? I don't know if you remember that from the study, but I'm just thinking, by the time I see that, I don't know how far back I would see it heading northbound, but location-wise, it's right at the 9th Avenue, so they may have passed that already, kind of overcoming that need for a U-turn. Was that looked at?
I don't know that it was specifically looked at, but I can say that I have not seen, and Jason, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I have not seen a traffic study look at locations of on-site signage that would be directing traffic. You know, they're looking at what the use at that location is and the number of trips it generates. I don't think, and again, I may be wrong, but I don't think that it looks at, hey, here's a monument sign, that's where it's going to catch people's eyes, this is where they're going to be going. I think it just looks at the use at that location.
Okay, that's too specific, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, we as the applicant from a signage design standpoint did look at that in addition to the viewpoint that I gave you guys a pass out on. And we at that height felt that it was adequate in terms of a northbound vehicle being able to see it and take that exit to get off at Auto Parkway.
You mean, oh, I don't know, a ninth, okay.
Yes.
Right.
Northbound and southbound.
Correct. Southbound, easier to see than
Okay.
northbound. And to answer your question, Commissioner Maccaro, Starbucks is requesting to have the ability to operate 24 hours, although they very rarely actually do that. Their typical hours are 4 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Thank you. Additional?
The sign at 24 hours, that sign is lit up. It's a lit sign. How does that, I guess there's no difference in the other signs. The Lexus sign is always lit, is that correct?
I think it's 24/7.
So it's the same in context with what's there, I believe. Okay.
I think.
I don't know for sure that the Lexus sign is on 24 hours a day. If it is, that's news to me
Okay.
because of certain older approvals that we had on there. So it could be during COVID, there's certain relief mechanisms that they were able to.
Do we have any guidelines? Are they restricted from running that Lexus sign 24 hours? Are we putting a a different kind of deal where everyone else can't, or how does that work?
So my recollection is that the sign ordinance requires that signage for businesses that are closed be extinguished after, I don't know if it's 10 or 11 at night, but if they're still open and in operation, then their signage, their illumination is allowed to be on at that point.
Is that it? Yeah. Any other, Commissioner Barber, any questions or concerns? Okay.
I think Commissioner Weiler pretty much summed up everything very, very nicely.
All right. Are there any other concerns, questions, discussion? No? Does someone want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion. I move to approve, do we have it's on my here, bear with me. I didn't have my printout.
Oh, here.
Thank you. I move to approve, where's it at here?
PL to the,
Oh, Resolution 2022-12. It was actually PL 22-0325 and PL 22-0326.
is there a second?
Okay, I was just going to say that as I feel comfortable and confident with staff's engineering has completely identified and solved any possible traffic impacts, I think the applicant is going to be correcting what is perceived as an existing blind curve. And as this has been zoned commercial for quite some time, it seems like a logical extension of commercial use in that property, so I will second the motion.
Okay, roll call?
Chair Barbe,
Approved?
Commissioner Barber,
Approve.
Commissioner Maccaro,
Approve.
Vice Chair Paul,
No, deny.
Commissioner Spear,
Approve.
Commissioner Weiler.
Yes.
The vote is 5-1 to approve.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to current business, and thank you very much to the applicant for coming, and also to our public for commenting. Current business, number 1, PL 22-0357, Planning Commission bylaws. My understanding there was a minor amendment, and we just need to review and discuss if we need to, and then, is that correct?
Through the chair, if I can just provide a quick
Sure.
one quick piece of information, or two pieces of information on this. The bylaws were approved a few months ago. Upon review of those bylaws, one of the commissioners here pointed out brought to my attention that there were there was one thing that the commission had requested be amended in there that had not been brought in, and it was the ability for the public to make presentations to Planning Commission. That's shown in strike through underline language on, let's see, on the bottom of what's page 9 of the bylaws. So it's about 12, 13 pages into that packet or that item. It says, instead of only a project proponent, it says any member of the public or a project proponent or appellant shall be provided to, et cetera, or shall be permitted to provide multimedia, et cetera. It also does, though, there's also a limitation that was added in there based on the discussion that had been had at the prior meeting that the allotted time for a member of the public is 3 minutes instead of the 10 or 15 or whatever the number that we had landed on for the applicant or appellant is. There was one other change that was inserted here that was done at after my review and consideration and discussions internally. What we would like to do moving forward, and I think this is noted in the staff report, is to provide a list of projects that we anticipate coming forward. It's not going to be a schedule per se because we can't control necessarily when applicants get things into us or if there's delays on receiving feedback from outside agencies, et cetera, but it'll kind of be a 3-month outlook or so of projects, both development projects and policy work that we're anticipating to be brought to the body here. So that'll be something that will be part of the city planner's report on an ongoing basis. So you'll see that starting next week should this be approved.
Next week, meaning next meeting, or?
Yes, that was the intent of what I said. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, any questions or discussion of the now revised, amended Planning Commission bylaws?
Yeah, I have one thing, thank you. On page 14, section C1B, there was a little bit of confusion at our last meeting about, I think it was around this sentence. And I just would like us to consider maybe some punctuation or something. It says, commissioners should not contact the media or speak on behalf of the advisory body unless authorized to do so. And I remember someone bringing up comments about we can't talk to the media. And I think it's maybe because of that this sentence has no punctuation in it. I think that the intent of that sentence was not to contact the media or speak on behalf of the advisor, that contacting and speaking were the same thing on behalf of the advisory body, unless authorized to do so. So I just throw that out there.
So you're suggesting to collapse the sentence there? Dare, would that work?
I don't know the right grammar.
Yeah, I'm wondering actually if what you want to do is clarify that you're contacting the media about an issue under the Planning Commission purview. I wonder if that's what you would clarify it a little more.
Well, when we talked about this, the staff response was, no, you can talk to the media all you want. You're just not supposed to represent the Planning Commission when you do that.
Or speak on any
Yes.
issues related to Planning Commission work?
Well, no, they didn't say that.
No, I'm sorry. I misspoke. You're correct. Yeah. So I think seems clear to me, but I think if you want to.
I mean, if it's clear to everybody else, then it's just me that looks funny. Then that's fine.
The key phrase there is on behalf of. That's the key.
Right.
Maybe you want to emphasize on behalf or something, but it's clear to me.
Well, since I was the one who brought up the question that day, I'm satisfied with staff's wording.
Okay.
It sounds clear to me.
All right, then perhaps we would have, is there a motion to approve the now revised amended bylaws?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second? Commissioner Spears seconds. Roll call.
Chair Barbe,
Approved.
Commissioner Barber,
Approve.
Commissioner Maccaro,
Approved.
Vice Chair Paul,
Yes, approved.
Commissioner Spear, Commissioner Weiler.
Yes.
Vote is 6-0 to approve.
Great. Moving on to policy discussion 2022-23 Planning Commission Work Plan. My understanding is that Commissioner Spear requested this agenda item, and I therefore pass the baton to him to lead and facilitate the discussion.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity and grateful for everyone's, well, I'll just say what I did was come up with a couple of ideas that I want to propose to you and how we address this. And I will say as a follow-up, the revision that we just approved with staff's giving us a 3-month outlook on the items that they're working on. So we have kind of a simultaneous path where we can prepare for those items. I really appreciate. I think that's a great move. Very helpful to us as I look at the issues that are coming up. Some of the issues, especially depending on our tenure on the commission and our experience, may require some study, some input, some thinking on our part as commissioners. And Thursday to Tuesday often seems, with all the other duties that we might have full-time, a short window for us to be able to do that. So having that 3-month look ahead is very helpful. Aside from that, I look at what we have here that's been shared with us, which is the ongoing recurring work plan. And I look at the elements that we talked about this and went over it a few months back. But I don't think we've had a clear mechanism or a mechanism to assure that we're staying diligent about using our time to address these items. So what I'm proposing, and I'm grateful for this opportunity, what I'm proposing, and I've passed out to each of you, is these 3 items on the left are example of the first 5 items on that work plan. And those columns and the information in them is already in this work plan that we have. The question that I'd like to address is, well, how do we take this, the elements that we have here, that all of these elements, I believe, at least these first 5, are council authorized for the most part. The council wants us to work on these items. How are we going to get that done? What are we going to do? Now, we do have to coordinate with staff because staff has a lot of work and time involved in working on these elements and items. So how do we coordinate that? What I'm proposing is that we make it a regular part of our work to at least review this and ask these questions. Number one, gather some input from staff in terms of understanding what their schedule looks like. So for example, take the Senate Bill 9 or take the housing element update. We should be clear on what it is staff's plan is as far as, hey, they've got 3 months, they're planning to work on this. It's a lot of work. They plan on finishing that roughly at such and such time. So let's coordinate their work with our work so that we can do 2 things. One, we can gather or provide input to them if needed while they're doing their work, or provide review and understanding and input after their work is complete so that we can prepare what we present or give to as far as our recommendations to City Council. So how do we do that? Well, I'm suggesting that there's 2 parts there. One is we understand the staff schedule and their deadlines, what they're working towards, and we take that and we kind of jot down a little note on what our commission work plan is in accordance with that, and what would be the target, at least, date that we as a commission meet and try to address that topic. So how do we do that? I'm suggesting maybe one idea that I have is that we take as a regular agenda item a cursory, real brief look each time and say, well, what do we need to update in this plan? And we spend a minute or 2 or perhaps 0, at least reviewing that and seeing if we have some out-of-date or updates that we need to provide for that. That'll give each one of our commissioners and the staff as well an idea of, hey, this is the target meeting that we're going to try to address this at least as a commission. If, for example, we have a target date on here, hey, we want to talk about the housing element down the road, and we find that our agenda is empty prior to that, maybe we can expedite it. Maybe we can shift it down and fill the gaps with it. So those are some of my thoughts. I'd be happy to hear what you guys have to say about it. What do you think?
Commissioner McCarrow, do you have a...
I agree with all the points. I think that's a great idea in filling our time.
Okay, I just have a few questions. In the past, we actually identified, prior to your appointment to the commission, we had one item, for example, where that we actually wanted to add to the work plan. And we've actually formed a subcommittee to assemble a presentation and material for both the commission to consider first, and then if the commission agreed with that recommendation, we went to City Council with that recommendation to say, hey, we'd like to include this in the work plan. City Council said, no, there's no time, staff resources doesn't work, it won't be on the work plan, and that's fine. So what I say that only because potentially an idea here would be if any one commissioner, or two commissioners actually, because to have a subcommittee you have to have more than one and less than three. If two commissioners were interested in actually really focusing on any one of these items, it's very possible that they could together work up an agenda that says we're going to investigate this and that and the other thing, and provide advice and interaction with city staff, potentially, on that particular work item, which council has blessed. It's just another idea. As opposed, what you're presenting, though, is, if I understand it correctly, and I'm a little bit confused, is that we might have a brief update on one of these from staff. Is that correct? Because that would require additional resources on their part to gin up a presentation and
I'm not
overview.
thinking, I wasn't anticipating something so involved. What I'm anticipating was kind of like what they have here in the first three columns. They put a note or two that really just gives an understanding of that.
Right.
The staff schedule note would be something similar, like, hey, working on this for next 3 months, plan to be done roughly. So it's a target. It's not anything, obviously staff has all kinds of unknowns that they get involved with. So I'm not proposing we really pin down the staff or obligate them or make their job more difficult. I'm just trying to get a cartoon of what they're doing so that we kind of know how to coordinate our work with that, timing-wise.
I guess what I'm wondering is, what is our work, timing-wise?
That's something I think we should do. Once they give us an idea, hey, this is kind of what our schedule is, we need to come up with in our meeting. The commission needs to decide what's our work plan with that. And I would suggest that would be, what would that look like? Well, I'm saying, well, the deliverable is the zoning code amendment needs to be put out for SB 9. Public hearings and advisory are our role. Mm-hmm. So then we sit down and we say, okay, what do we need to do for that? What's our goal? What do we need to do? We kind of jot that down, so we all kind of have it in our head. When we go to this meeting next week and have this is what we're going to do. And then we attack it. So everyone should hopefully, we should decide as a group what our plan is, and then going into it, we all kind of know what to expect that's coming. That's how I envision it anyway.
Commissioner Barber, you have a look on your face that looks like you want to say something.
I'd be interested if staff feels comfortable addressing whether or not they think this is something that's doable from their resource point of view.
That's my concern.
Okay.
I could speak to that. I would like to kind of hear the commissioner's input as a whole before I can make sure I'm addressing it holistically. So maybe if you don't mind, if we kind of go through here and then I can respond at the end.
Maybe to that, maybe we can ask the commissioners to put forth what they anticipate, what they anticipate we're asking staff to do. What does that look like to you? Because to me, it's a couple notes and nothing more. But what does it look like to you?
Well, I guess I'm struggling a little bit on what it is that you would like to see the commission do. So what I'm kind of hearing is we've got some big things that are occurring. Staff is doing their job to disseminate information and put it into a document that ultimately comes to us for review and approval. But while staff is putting this together, it seems like at some point these documents go out for public review. And that's where it seems to me that we should be notified when that does go out for public review. So, and a link to the city's website of this document's out for public review. As commissioners, we should probably be reviewing that, kind of at that point, so that we have a real good understanding before this comes to us with 5 days' notice of, okay, here's the document. Good luck in reading this over the weekend. And I think that may help us a little bit as far as reviewing these documents well ahead of time. And then, once that comes to us, and during that period of review and modification, before it formally comes to this group for approval, 1-2 commissioners can say, I'd like to bring this up for discussion. And then we can talk about maybe some of the concerns that one or more of us might have on that document, kind of as part of the public review process, as opposed to, us discussing it on the dais the day that the city's looking or staff's looking for a recommendation. So that was, when you were talking about this, that was kind of what was going through my mind, that would allow us to see these things a little earlier, have enough time to potentially bring it up to this body for discussion, as long as it doesn't violate the normal, review process. And that's the gray part that I'm not sure if we are even allowed to do that. So there's my 2 cents worth. But I think the premise of what you're trying to get to, which is we need to look at this, we need early input, we need to help staff go in a direction that we as a body thinks that staff should go, in addition to, what the public says as well, and what staff thinks. It's just one more group of eyes, our eyes, before we get to a point of, you got to make a decision. So.
Right. So I think staff is doing that in the sense that we stated a few years ago we'd like to see a work plan so that we had visibility to what's coming down the line, and I think that's a great document, and it's gone a long way. I think what Adam just said earlier about adding a closer timeline within the next month or two, what he expects to come to the commission, is going that next step and giving us even better visibility than we have now. And I think that's about the best the commission could hope for as far as timing and advance notice, and the fact he's already has an agenda item to report at the end of each of these meetings what else is in the pipeline, what else is going on.
Right, but I do think that, please correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Spear, but the interest here is to actually identify items for us to discuss prior to an actual discussion where it's coming up for a motion, and that's where the legal question is can we as a body to have that conversation?
And we just passed bylaws that say we will not do that. The bylaws say we will not do that.
So the bylaws basically established what items amongst other things, obviously, they established items that the commission could request to discuss, right? They established this procedure, this process that we're going through right now. What they did say, and which is what you're getting at, Vice Chair Paul, is that they cannot you cannot request to discuss something that's, in the foreseeable future agenda for the commission. That doesn't mean that if there's a project that planning staff feels like the commission's input would be very helpful on, we could bring that to you. And I think we have a few times over the last couple of years. Specifically, I remember with regard to the housing element, the East Valley specific plan. When we did the ADU ordinance, at that point, we established actually a subcommittee. So there have been policy items that we do bring in, and I know Veronica has been bringing a few In fact, she'll be back here in a couple weeks with a general plan annual progress report, the general plan 2022 amendment that she's been working through, and some feedback and input on that. So, there is a procedure that we will be able to utilize if there are things that we need to present and kind of keep you updated on. If there are specific items that you want to discuss, though, that are kind of in that realm, and that's exactly what we did establish last time, is that those are items that cannot be put forward for commission discussion unless they're docketed by staff for formal input or a open discussion and noticed if necessary. I don't know, Dara, if I missed anything with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, and we have to keep in mind that staff is obligated per the municipal code to do what City Council directs them to do, and so the Planning Commission can't also try to jump in and direct them to do something when they're designated by the City Council. So that's what we have to be a little bit careful of in what you're talking about.
So, but there are opportunities, which you already have been doing, and I think perhaps have been doing it more so in more recent years, in terms of giving us a heads up, providing actual agenda items to review and provide input. We have been doing that. We certainly did it on the climate plan under Commissioner Weiler's facilitation. That was quite intense in terms of input and review all the way through. So as an example. So we might be okay. However, if Commissioner Spear, if there's something specific that you'd like to have them highlight, perhaps, I don't know.
So I really liked Commissioner Weiler's example. You gave sort of a good example of an item where there's public comment, and I wish I could repeat exactly what you said on that. But I thought that was a really good envisionment of what I kind of was trying to get to. Also, what Adam mentioned regarding, hey, there are these items that come up. Veronica's presented these items before, so clearly there are items that involve our noodling, I guess, or our understanding at least, our familiarity with, prior to that being a finished body of work as well. So I guess there are clearly, those two are very good examples of what I was alluding to, rather than just show up one day on a Tuesday after a Thursday and say, let's vote on it. Right. So maybe identifying what those are. I certainly don't envision putting a burden or trying to tell staff what to do. That's not my envisionment of this. My envisionment is simply to say, and part of this is addressed by this 3-month look ahead, but also to take that and say, hey, like what I liked was, Stan, you said, hey, staff would tell us, hey, there's going to be a public notice of this item. Okay, great. That's something that we can be aware of, and then we decide. I forgot what you mentioned that we would do with that, but you mentioned something valuable that we would do with that piece of information. Do you recall what that was?
Yeah, I mean, if a document is out for public review and comment, and, two commissioners felt that it was worthy of us to have a discussion on that document, that I was thinking that we would have the ability to do that. Commissioner Paul says, our bylaws now say no, that we can't do that, but isn't that sort of the same thing when we get an update from staff on, okay, here's what we're doing on the general plan, and we sort of have a little bit of a discussion.
Right, that's the update.
So I kind of, other than how you get here to have the discussion, I guess if our bylaws say that we can't do that, then it becomes, what, somebody suggests it to staff, that staff comes and gives us an update on the new East Valley Parkway specific plan, and it's at their discretion versus ours? Because I guess we tied our hands on this change in the bylaws.
No, I think you're right. It's up to their discretion because we can't dictate their workload. So we can suggest they put something together and put it on the meeting, but it is up to them.
And I guess that's not where I'm thinking that we as a body want to do is create any more work from staff by giving us an update. I think we kind of want to take a shot at taking, I don't know, identifying what our concerns are with this document that's out for public review. But apparently we can't do that.
Well, I think that's why I think we're talking about, given our bylaws, that recognizing that that a document or a policy is out for public review, that we have to take it upon ourselves to inform ourselves on that. And if we have questions or concerns, we can relate to staff about it.
But it won't be a discussion.
But it won't be a discussion here until it comes here as a quote update, and then we can all provide our input based on our own individual deliberation as well as individual conversation with staff if we have. I'm just trying to visualize this going forward if that's how it would work.
And certainly your example of the climate action plan, I don't know, we must have had 8 hearings on that.
That was truly iterative.
Yeah, and okay, we're not going to approve it tonight. Why? Because we only got through pages 1 through 10. But I mean, we can do that, I guess, with every document that comes to this body. We could go through the whole thing if we so chose. I mean, I like the idea, Commissioner Spear, about, hey, let's bring these things up. Let's take an early look at it. Maybe there is something there that, we as a body could suggest changes, but apparently we can't do it as a body. We can only do it as an individual.
Until it's presented to us.
Until it's presented. I mean, is that kind of how our bylaws were working?
I think that's probably a good description of how it's written. The one thing that I think I want to kind of point out in the discussions that we've been having, that you guys have been having right here with regard to, for instance, the climate action plan, the environmental justice and safety element work that Veronica's been doing, the East Valley specific plan, the housing element, those types of larger policy documents that really do have that need for feedback from the commission, from the community on a regular basis. Those are the items that I think you'll see, though we have been consistently bringing that, I won't say for a long time, but at least for the last few years, we've been bringing those items here for discussion, those larger policy documents. Something like, let's say, SB 9, it's a technical kind of thing that we are making changes to the code to address something. Did that necessitate a discussion item here in front with the commission? I would say no. That would be my take on it. We got through it. It did wind up going to council twice, so maybe it should have been yes. But in general, there's some stuff that I think is very much more substantive, and I think staff has done a pretty decent job of bringing those things here for discussion ahead of when we actually get those to the body for consideration. Some of the more, on the list here, some of the more technical stuff, I think is something that we work with the, experts in the field and the consultants, whoever might be involved in crafting code language, for instance, like the alternative water heaters. That would require building code building code amendment potentially, et cetera, et cetera. So those are things that getting input from the commission may not necessarily serve any purpose, because the technical is something we need to identify and determine first, right? So I think kind of just circling it or drawing back at it, the big stuff, what I think we can all acknowledge, the climate action plans, the housing elements, or other policy documents, probably I think it's the active transportation plan that the engineering folks, actually I think it's the Comprehensive Active Transportation Strategy, is that what they call it these days, the CATS? That's going to be something that's going to be kicking off in the not too distant future, and that'll be something that we would likely be bringing to you folks for input and feedback, et cetera. So those are the kind of bigger policy documents that I think do warrant this type of discussion and this type of public meeting, discussion and discourse. That said, it is something that I think staff strategically looks for the right time to do that, right? To bring something and say, when we don't have something solid to provide an update on, or to ask for feedback on. Let's say we're in the middle of doing community meetings and outreach with the community. We don't have results of that. We've already kind of had that discussion with you all as at a prior meeting. There's not really much to bring forward. We understand that, and we identify when the appropriate and most effective times to bring those discussions to you is. So really, I guess I would argue that I think staff is doing a pretty good job of providing those opportunities for the policy documents and the type of work that I think is appropriate to request that on. Now, I hear that what you're looking for is potentially maybe either more opportunity or opportunity on more of these items. Is that, I don't know if you might be able to give me a little more input on that.
No, what you just said is kind of what I was picturing. I mean, you're talking about a climate action plan or something. You give us an idea based on your schedule of what that looks like for you. Now we know. Okay, they're going to be working on that in 3 months. Okay, that's the note that I envisioned here. So I can look at that and not remembering I can just glance at this and say, oh, they're working on that now, or they're working on that in 3 months. That's all I envisioned from your input. So a note is all I pictured for that. Then we take a look at that and we say, and then we decide, just like what Stan came up with, hey, there's something that we probably should do about that. Whatever that is, we discuss it and say, yeah, we do have something to do or need to do about that, and we schedule it for our meetings based on their schedule. So I don't really envision you guys having to do anything. This is just more of a coordination so that we can plan any work that we do need to do, as you guys have brought up some good points of things like, the climate action plan, like the housing element. And we can know when that is. We can figure out what we need to do about it, and we can plan it. So what I'm not clear on exactly is this new portion that we've added to our that you brought up regarding restrictions. I'm not real clear on what that means exactly, or what the purpose is of that, other than I think what I'm gathering is the purpose of this, the goal of that is to say, hey, let's not throw any undue effort. Let's not burden the staff with anything. Is that what we're getting at with this? Is that the goal?
So the goal of that is so that we're not putting information out that may be contradictory or may not be complete when we know we're bringing something to you folks in the near future, right? So to have a discussion on an item that we know is coming to you in 2-3 months, whatever it might be, when we're not prepared to be able to answer questions and items that may come up because we haven't gotten through that process, that's kind of where the impetus to limit that ability to put something on the agenda by the commission. That's kind of where that impetus came from, because we don't want to be left with not being able to provide information because we don't have it yet. We don't want to be in that position of trying to give you answers when we're still waiting for them, and it really doesn't do I don't think it does a good service to any of us. If we have that information on items that are significant, like I said, we'll be providing that. If there are things that that you're looking for updates on and you want to contact me on an individual basis, we can talk on it. And if there's something that after discussion, it's like, yeah, that does make sense to at least provide that update. That can be something that I could include in my my kind of weekly not weekly, but yes, my city planner's report for what's coming in the future. So, there are options and opportunities, I think, but the idea of keeping the items that the commission could request to be on the agenda, to keep things that we know are coming to you guys off of that list of items that you guys want to put on, I think it is a beneficial way for us to make sure we're managing the projects and the process and making sure we have the information coming in without biasing what it might be.
So it's a readiness factor, essentially. So, does that make sense then?
It does. Maybe I'm just thinking out loud here, but does that play into our planning of saying, hey, when we're trying to put that item down as something that we need to work on, we're having that discussion live with you, as saying, hey, is this a good time? Is this a good time for us to plan to address this? Or you may tell us at that meeting, you know what, that's a little premature. We're not really ready for that. It's probably better that we wait because staff has some things they need to do prior to that. So maybe that's a discussion that we have where we all come to an agreement, including you, where you tell us, yeah, that timing's not so good, or it is. Is that something that you think would address that concern, or not completely?
So it sounds like that would be in response to your biweekly update, so to speak, so that he discusses what's on the docket coming down the road, that those are known fixed items, I mean, roughly, time-wise.
Semi-fixed, yes.
Yeah, semi-fixed, time-wise. But at that point, city planner's report, that's actually after the comments of the commissioners. But once you hear that, you can determine as to whether or not you believe there needs to be additional or discussion on the part of the commission, and that would have to happen like 2 meetings later if there was a agenda item proposed by you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think what you're saying is, hey, Adam's going to bring up stuff that's coming down the pike. Should we do something about it? Should we plan? And then we have the discussion with Adam. Adam, is it that coming down the pike? Is this a good time for us to talk about it as a group?
One thing that, just to clarify, I know you had said that, yeah, the city planner's report is after you talk about future agenda items. So I'm intending to actually have that as a written document as part of the agenda packet. So it's not going to be just wait till
so it
the
won't
end.
be a surprise then.
Right. It's not going to be wait till the end and listen to what Adam has to say as far as what's coming. It's going to be, a list that will be updating as necessary, and
That's even better.
and that'll give you that visibility, right? Of
Right.
hey, should we have a discussion of do we want what we need to do on this?
Right.
The other issue though becomes the aspect of we can't talk about what's not on the agenda. So how do we get to
That's
that?
what I meant about it would flip to 2 times later, and it would have to be proposed to be on the agenda.
Right. And
So if it's coming as a note, we're reading this before our meeting for the night. We have that discussion in the meeting of whether or not we should address it. It could be the next meeting, right? Potentially, if it needed to be that early.
so it couldn't be a discussion of whether you wanted to address it. That's the issue.
It's a discussion of whether we wanted to discuss it.
It's not a discussion though. It's a
Yeah, so just, it's really,
That's so
the reason the bylaws are drafted the way they are with regard to future agenda items that the commissioners want to put on there is because you're not allowed to discuss something that's not on the agenda. So the way we put it, and I think you were absent for the meeting where this was actually discussed, but if a commissioner wants to put something on the agenda, they simply state when the time comes, when they're asked for an agenda item, they're simply supposed to state the agenda item they'd like to see. There's not supposed to be a discussion about that or about whether to place it on the agenda, because then it's a discussion without being agendized.
So it can't even be, hey, Adam, is it a good time for us to plan this? It can't even be something like that?
I mean, I don't know. It's really hard for me to understand what you're talking about in the abstract, because I'm not sure what you mean by plan this. You know what I mean?
I'll give you an example. If Adam says, hey, Veronica's going to come talk about the housing element that's up and coming. So now we need to decide, is that something we need to go over, I guess?
Yeah, so I don't think anybody understands what you mean by, is that something we have to go over?
Because we will be.
Because we will be going over that when she brings it.
Quite frankly, in my short time here on the Planning Commission, I've been satisfied that staff has been bringing items to our attention when they feel it's time that they need feedback or need discussion or any guidance. I have been, as Adam will confess, I do contact him individually asking, as I'm trying to do research and my homework. And I don't want to risk micromanaging staff. I'm gonna just say short and simple. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I'm comfortable with the way staff has been handling this and presenting them to us.
Is it an issue of timing in the sense of there's not enough time to deliberate on what some of these big policy issues that you've seen go by? Or are they, or as specific as zoning amendments, et cetera?
Yeah, no, and part of this is addressed by Adam's idea of shifting this to, or presenting a look ahead, right? Because now if it's a lengthy item, it's not, hey, here you go, Thursday, Tuesday, let's figure it out. It's more than that. So that's helpful.
I think perhaps one way to also just enhance it is that when you provide your written overview of what's on the docket coming up, that you provide any links there for us that we might be able to use to, forward plan or forward think it, at least ourselves individually. That might help.
Here's the other question that I have is, and part of this comes with my lack of understanding exactly of when City Council says, yeah, all of these items here are items that we want the Planning Commission to work on, right? They've told us that. Part of my question is, what does that mean? What are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do with the housing element update? What are we supposed to do with all of these things? I don't know exactly what the expectation is. And and again, if like when the housing element came up the last time, I didn't know anything about the housing element. Never seen it before, right? So Thursday to Tuesday was really rough for me to jump in and say, well, I don't know if I have any input. The East Valley specific plan, same thing. So Adam, I guess the question is, you'd be now giving us a 3-month look ahead. That would be giving us an idea about, hey, the specific plan is coming up, guys. It's going to be presented to you up in who knows when. That would give us an opportunity to look into that, to study it, to do additional, if we want to go check stuff out, we could do that ahead of time. But again, this last thing, I can't remember what it was, Stan, that you had mentioned that came up, and you said, hey, this is a lot to throw us, at us, and we haven't looked at. It was the what was it?
The CFD.
Yes. Where we were thrown a whole, something we just weren't familiar with. It was pretty lengthy, had a long history, and all of that. So that's the other scenario that I get worried about. I thought, in that case, I don't know that there was anything for us to do, frankly. So part of this is my being blind about, are there lengthy issues that we should spend more time on, and we just don't know what we're supposed to do yet?
And I'm getting a little more clarity here, because as I look at this, and you're absolutely right, it says Planning Commission Work Plan. Oh, it's a Planning Commission Work Plan. It's not a Planning Department work plan, it's a Planning Commission work plan. So what does that truly mean? And I don't think we ever begged the question that, okay, what does that truly mean, a Planning Commission work plan? Because you come on and you say, well, it looks like we're supposed to do something. What are we supposed to do? Because it is our work plan. And maybe it's not the right title.
So that is a question I have been asking, and I wish that I could talk to the prior director about the terminology here, because it really, if you were to look at what's on here, this is the work that the planning division is doing to provide to the commission to make decisions or to make recommendations on. So the action that the commission is taking, and maybe this is where this will help clarify things a little more. It's the work that you're doing is taking action on items that staff has worked through, identified, prepared, and brought forward. We try to do what we can, everything we can, to make sure that you're prepared to provide that direction. And I think those kind of intermediate, updates that we bring to you is a way to do that. I think there's other ideas that have been brought forward over the past couple meetings, or at least today we've talked about the 3-month look ahead and potentially links to documents that might be there. I think that you all should be getting our public hearing notices and public notices for environmental documents. If you're not,
I'm not.
I don't
I
think
haven't
so.
gotten anything like that.
Not to my knowledge.
interesting. All right. We'll make sure that you do it. We have a listserv that we send like constant contact kind of email blast anytime there's a public hearing notice that goes out or a notice.
I think I've gotten one.
I think I get my public hearing notices. I think one of the things that I'm kind of missing, and, I should be checking the website probably more than I do, but when there's a public workshop, and you know what, I may know it, that it's going to come up a month from now, but a month goes by and a million things went through my head, and I've just plain old forgotten. But if we were able to get kind of a quick email, hey, and next week we've got this public workshop on, I don't know, the general plan update, because you guys are doing all of this public outreach, which is really, really good. And unless I'm checking the website, I just don't know when they are, because I would like to go, because when they do come across my desk, so to speak, you know what? Many times I'm able to, and then sometimes it's just too late and I can't. But that would be one of the other helpful things, in this update, 3-month outlook with a link, and then and I don't want to add any more work to staff either, but that update of a notice of when a public workshop's going to happen, I know it'd be helpful. At least then we can hear what the public's saying too.
Yeah, that is a good point. Adam keeps talking about things that we get these notifications, and no, we don't. Right.
Sincerely apologize.
So think about that. We get a brand new planning commissioner to say, "Oh, I guess I should add him to the distribution of all these things."
It would be we would be sending it to the Escondido Planning Commission at escondido.org, so they
Now that
should
we
be
have
getting
that.
it, right?
Oh, that would work, right?
Because speaking with the clerk's office, they keep that up to date with the names and the email addresses of the current.
Right. So they only have to add that one. Right.
And those that was coming out of city clerk, just all this various.
Those email addresses.
Yeah.
About that list. So I was informed when I had started to look to how to set something like this up that every commission in fact has a whatever commission at escondido.org email address already. So
We've had this for some time.
apparently we have for I don't know how many years. But apparently, yes, if you had the insight and the intuition to try to email Escondido Planning Commission at escondido.org, you would have been getting emails for who knows how long. That was news to me, but it made setting up this email system a lot easier on my end.
So,
but, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, just the issue of public workshops, that's a pretty broad topic, because there's many, many city departments that do public workshops on many different things. So I guess there would need to be a filter there that for planning commission specific things, unless you want to be receiving emails to all.
Well, I get this from various cities.
Yeah.
And it'll pop up. I'll click on it. I'll take a quick look. Okay, that's
Right.
not for me to.
Sure.
And I've got several cities that I do that with, and it's kind of more of a hit and miss. I get the notifications, and then I think I get the things that are going to the zoning administrator, which is really strange, but it's cool because I get to kind of see. But it's the public workshops; those are the ones that I'm missing.
And a good example of that would be the East Valley Specific Plan Workshop that Mike Strong facilitated, and he very specifically went out to the commission, I believe, at least I know, because I participated, and said, hey, you want to participate? This is some time ago. But just as an example, that kind of public workshop is what I think you're referring to.
But please don't take it the wrong way. I know it's not you. I may not have clicked the appropriate. link thing on the city website that says, look, I want to be noticed on these 15 items that continuously come through. Goofy me, I may have just clicked 2 of them instead of the 10. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't think that our list that you can click on things, I think it's just, I want to receive notices for planning projects.
Then that-
It's not, and it doesn't, it really is limited to public hearing notices and notices that would be, any legal notices, basically. So public hearings and environmental documents that go out for public review. It does not necessarily typically include, public workshops. There are times where staff will send those out as part of an email blast, but it's not, we can't keep an eye on what's going on in other departments and elsewhere in the city, I think, like Chair Barbe was saying. But if there are projects, I know that, again, I'll mention her, Veronica has done that for a couple of her items, her workshops or public engagements. So there is that option to use. I just need to look into the legality of what we can and cannot be sending out to some, not to you, this group necessarily, but just if the people signed up to receive items on, to receive notification on planning hearings or whatever. So what we can and can't just shoot out to someone, right? So that's something we'll look at. But I really do apologize. I thought that you guys were all getting all those notices, so that my sincere apologies, and that will hopefully provide a little more insight, background, etc., to what's coming your way. I think that the environmental documents, those have a good summary of whatever the project is. So it's got a good project description, whether it be a policy document or a development project. That'll be something that I think will give you a decent bit of knowledge on what is being worked through and worked on and ultimately going to be presented that you can then talk to staff about.
Adam, is the project list that you emailed us, is that public?
Yeah, that's a public webpage. You're talking about that dashboard? Yes.
Dashboard, sorry.
That's all right. It's been drilled into my head, so.
The work plan? The work plan's not public, though, per se.
I don't know that it is.
Yeah. It doesn't. I don't care necessarily. I was just curious.
I don't believe it is. There's not any reason that we say
Yeah.
we won't, because it's,
Right.
it's been adopted by Reso of the commission.
Right. And it's a work plan, and it gets changed all the time, and et cetera. Other questions, comments?
I have a question for Adam. Adam, on these lengthy items where you would present them to us ahead of time while they're iterative, what role do you see us providing you interim input on while you're in your work product? That's kind of a general question, but do you envision us, hey, let's have Veronica go chat and present where we are right now with the Planning Commission so we can get some feedback? Because you guys are doing a big, huge project, a lot of work, a lot of time. Do you get to the end of it and come up with all of these almost finished work plan and then come to us and say, approve it or not approve it? Do you look for input on this so that as a course of what you're doing in the interim, or no?
I think that's how we've, more recently, that's how we've started to be able, we've solicited input from the commission more earlier in the process. And I think actually the climate action plan maybe was the impetus to this, because we did have a document that was pretty close to as what staff thought was ready to go. And when we brought it here, we found out, okay, wait, there's more to unravel here. So I think that probably was a learning experience on our end of, hey, let's make sure we're doing things in advance and making sure that what we're working through is at least whether the commissioners agree with that policy direction or not, that's not the issue, but to at least make sure that they understand what the implication, or what not the implications, but what the policies that we are looking at are, or what the document that we're looking at is and what it's doing. It's really hard to say, every project is going to be at this stage or that stage or the other. But when there are time, when the time is right for us to be needing and requesting that input, that's when I think you'll be seeing us in front of you with items that are, that we're looking for that assistance on.
And just as a point of note, it's in some of these cases, there are also public citizen advisory groups, as there was for the Climate Action Plan, for example. If another example of the housing, there's the Housing Coalition for Escondido. So these significant groups that are out there actually working with staff, as I understand it anyway, to provide input on an ongoing basis as well. And I think that's really important to note, because there is citizen involvement in a lot of these big policy projects.
Right. So I'd like to go back to, at the last meeting, we had the agenda item, the general plan annual progress report, and Veronica or Adam said, hey, this is going to be on there. We're not going to have people from all the different departments, although all the different departments contributed. If you guys have any questions, can you please send them in advance? And that's, your opportunity to participate. And maybe that wasn't a whole lot of notice, but that's as much as you got on that particular item. Anything in the work plan, you have a general knowledge that it's coming up, and you can see on here the Grape Day Master Plan. Oh, we have a park called Grape Day. I don't know anything about it. That's your advance notice that you can go look at the environmental document and see if there's a meeting coming up, and become familiar with that project. This is that list of things you should be familiar with as a planning commissioner, and your opportunity to comment starts the day you read it, and it only ends at the meeting where we provide direction. We have all that time in between to participate.
And just remembering, as also with the bylaws, we do have the potential, or if we wish to establish subcommittees to work on any particular aspect. I'm just reminding folks of that. Similar to the city council. Other thoughts, comments on this? Barry, so how would you like to proceed with this? Are you satisfied, or?
I am. I really appreciate everybody's comments in this discussion. It's been good from my standpoint anyway, helpful, and I think some of the things that we've talked about, this 3-month look ahead is great. I don't know that there's any other mechanism we need other than what's been addressed. This idea of obviously, if we're getting noticed on items that maybe have been not included in the past, and we're getting this 3-month look ahead, that I think goes a long way to help provide us the opportunity to really hit things or bring them up if they need to be brought up. So I don't know. I don't have anything further in terms of recommendations or motions that I would suggest, but unless anyone else does,
Does anyone else have a comment, motion, concern?
No, I mean, I'm glad Commissioner Spear brought this up for a discussion item. I thought the discussion was really good. We kind of, start honing down towards, what our tasks are and what we should probably be looking at, and I think it was an appropriate discussion to have. So, thank you, Commissioner Spear, for bringing that up.
you bet.
Anything it brought to Adam's attention that we were not getting some of the
Yeah.
feedback that we expected.
From a communications
That would have
standpoint.
happened if you hadn't brought this up for
Exactly.
discussion.
True, and I think some clarification as well, that maybe the misnomer of what this is not a work plan that City Council says, hey, we got a couple items we want the commission to address. My understanding from this discussion is this is really, the planning department is working on these items, and whatever input they need from us, we will address. Is that really a more accurate description?
Yeah, I've always thought of it as a planning division work plan that, the commission has authority to take action on or to make recommendations on, but they're policy issues and items that staff is working through and going to be providing to the commission. So yeah, I think semantics and the way in what this document is titled is probably part of the issue. And even that, probably changing that one word from commission to division would probably have maybe preempted this conversation, but
Or-
I do think it was definitely a necessary conversation, though, because we got a couple things out there that unbeknownst to me, you weren't getting certain documents and the like. But I will say, to kind of piggyback or to build on what Vice Chair Paul had said earlier, if there are items that you're reading the staff report or you're going through things ahead of time, whether it be because you see it on this list, on the 3-month outlook, on an environmental document, or whatever it is, reach out to us. Whether it be myself, Jason or Owen in engineering, or whoever the project planner might be, reach out to us. We're more than willing and wanting to kind of explain, talk to you, make sure that you guys know what's going on and have a full understanding. Because if you're not able to understand it, I guarantee you there's people out. Well, there would be potentially people out there that that wouldn't understand it as well, right? So that helps us also to be able to hone in and dial in the message that we need to be providing as well. So reach out to us. And I know I think every one of you has on one thing or another in the past, and it's only been 6 months with this commissioner. So yeah, so please continue to, though. That it really, we appreciate that.
So one action item then, Adam, would be, I would recommend that this does get reworked with a little bit of an intro here. I'm thinking of new people coming on board, and they're handed this document, and it might just be a little bit better to better title it perhaps, and maybe a few lines that just reinforce what we've been talking about. If that's, I don't think that's a big.
It shouldn't be that tough to do. I don't know when we'll. I'm
there's
trying to
no rush or
remember.
anything. I'm just saying for the.
Definitely, we'll have that as a note so that when we
long
prepare
haul.
this next time,
Right.
when we update this annually,
Yeah.
we'll make sure that kind of information is on there.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question, Adam. The email address that you mentioned, if somebody today emails something to that, we're all supposed to get a copy
get
of
it.
that?
Immediately from that person.
And it goes to our personal email address that we provided on file, right?
Do you not get things that
I
I
haven't
send?
gotten anything other than personal emails that maybe, individual planning people might have
Right.
sent me. I don't get anything.
Do any of you get
No.
emails that like when we send out the agenda?
I get that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It's from you. It doesn't look like it's going to the planning commission email and then being forwarded to
Like
us.
as of the last couple of days, you're implementing this, right?
No, it's been a couple months now.
Oh, really?
That we send to Escondido at Escondido Planning Commission at escondido.org, and it automatically, that's like a list of email addresses. So when it gets sent to you as an individual, and to each one of you as an individual.
So there's no way we could tell that it's sent to that address then?
I don't know.
The agenda we just got, it didn't look like it was forwarded to us. It looked like it came from you.
That would, right. So the one that you were sent that comment that came from,
You.
right.
The comment that was written by the resident who lived near the Starbucks, did that come through for everybody? Yeah, because that came through that.
Right. So
correct.
it's sent
Yeah.
by whoever it's sent by, i.e. myself, Jessica, some others sometimes, but it sent from that individual to the list of people, and that list of people includes each of your individual email addresses. It includes myself, Darren, Jessica as well. So
Yeah.
we get those, if I were to email something to the group, I would get it myself, as would a couple other members of staff and yourselves.
So just to be clear, did everybody receive that letter ahead of time? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so it's working. The system is working. Did you, Commissioner Spear, receive that?
I have something from Jessica Engel, which was the packet, and I don't recall receipt. I'm looking right now.
It would have been today,
It would have been today,
yeah,
and it would have
Yeah.
been from?
from
Either from myself or Jessica, I don't recall.
Adam and Jessica.
Jessica.
Oh, that's right, it was from Adam, because I replied to that.
Yeah.
I replied to saying, I'm going to be showing up at the hearing.
Yeah, just to make sure the system is working. It sounds like everybody else received it. We're just not sure.
Sounds like it's working.
Okay.
I'll verify it later, but
Okay.
it sounds like it's
Okay, yeah, for some reason.
All right. Any other comments on this particular item? All right. Thank you very much. So we're not taking a motion on that, we're simply information for Adam to take into consideration and act on. Okay, so future agenda items, speaking of which. Any input from anyone? No? Okay. Hearing none. Oral communications, no one is here. Planning commissioners, general comments? Thoughts going forward?
You know, just real briefly, with all of this, you know what, Adam, I think you and your staff are doing a phenomenal job. I really do. I know there's a lot of pressure to get a lot of things done. You've got all of these various, you know, policy documents that you're working on, along with a whole bunch of projects that are kind of in the pipeline. But you know what, I talked to your staff on various projects, and I think you've got a really good staff. They're very conscientious. They get back to us real quick, and then your willingness to talk to any one of us at any time, just for me, thank you. It's much appreciated.
I would add to that whenever we get comments like tonight, of the folks that are working with the staff, they seem genuinely, what I got tonight was they made it sound like, hey, working with planning in Escondido is a joy. It's different from other places. That's the impression I got, which was really good to hear. It's nice.
Compliment to staff?
It was a joy, actually. I think, Adam, we could almost work with you on a brewery.
Carrie, could you speak into, I can't hear.
Sorry. We almost, I think you were the one helping us with a brewery project that was going to be where Tony Pepperoni's went. It was a while ago. Maybe. My client lost their funding, yeah, but you guys were great. It was a long time ago.
Okay, great. All right, everybody likes positive feedback. That's wonderful. Okay, so city planners report, speaking of.
So I first want to say thank you all for some of the information that you provided to me today that really helps clarify that you're not getting certain pieces of information. So that's the first thing. I just wanted to thank you on that. And we have a meeting. We're not meeting on the 22nd. That's 2 days before Thanksgiving. We will have our next meeting December 13th. We've got what looks to be a pretty full agenda that night. It's likely going to have two development projects that are somewhat sizable. North Iris is a condominium project, and then a project on Conway. That's a 50 lot, give or take, subdivision. We will have the omnibus item that you see on the work plan that'll be brought forward, and then Veronica will be here again to make a presentation and an update on the 2022 general plan amendment project she's working on. So also one thing coming into the next year, so December 13th, we're having a meeting. We won't have a meeting on December 27th. That's the week between Christmas and New Year's. So the next meeting beyond that would be I think it's the 10th of January. So we'll get some information as we get towards that, as far as what'll be on that, potentially be on that agenda. But your next agenda that you'll see for the meeting on the 13th of December, that will have that kind of 3-month outlook, give or take. And I'll have some disclaimers saying, hey, these are all based on certain factors that are potentially out of our control, but this is what we're anticipating being at, where we're anticipating being. So and that's it.
So the omnibus, that's the cleanup thing. Is that going to be a lot, or just a few things, you think? Is it
Can't
big?
really get into much of the detail on it, but I can talk to you offline.
Could you just re-mention the two development projects?
North Iris,
Yeah.
and Conway.
And Conway. Okay, thank you.
And I believe they are on the
They're on the
dashboard.
dashboard, yeah.
If they're not, let me know. That's another thing that
I imagine it's difficult to keep that up to date. Is that it? Any more questions for? All right. Then I believe we are ready to adjourn. Thank you very much. Stay dry.